The Soprano family makes money by finding places where money is already moving and forcing itself into the transaction. Tony does not need one giant business because the family earns from garbage routes, construction sites, gambling rooms, debts, hijacked goods, clubs, fraud, and political favors. The show keeps returning to the same idea. If someone needs access, protection, credit, labor, silence, or a second chance, Tony's world can turn that need into money. The first thing to understand is the envelope system. Tony is not personally stealing every truck or collecting every gambling debt. Other men earn from their own rackets, then kick a percentage upward. Paulie has a street action. Christopher has hijackings, gambling, stolen goods, and scams. Silvio has the Bing. Ralph and Vito become valuable because of construction. The exact scheme changes from person to person, but the rule does not change. If a man earns, Tony expects his piece. That is why money matters more than almost anything else in the family. A soldier can be liked, feared, or respected, but if he cannot earn, his position weakens. Ralph is the clearest example. Tony hates him and the audience sees why, but Ralph brings in serious construction money. That protects him. Vito gets treated the same way later. The family talks about rules and tradition, but when a man brings in big envelopes, everyone suddenly becomes more patient. Baron's Sanitation is Tony's cleanest public cover. It gives him a salary, health insurance, and a job title. That matters because Tony needs an explanation for his lifestyle. He lives in a large house, pays for private school, buys expensive gifts, gambles, eats well, and keeps cash around. Baron gives him a legal-looking surface. But the sanitation racket is bigger than Tony's paycheck. Garbage routes are valuable because businesses cannot function without them. A restaurant, office, store, or construction site needs waste removed regularly. If a mob-connected sanitation company controls the route, it gains leverage over the businesses on that route. The money can come from contracts, inflated prices, pressure on competitors, and agreements that keep other haulers away. The work looks boring, but the route is the prize. That is why Tony reacts so strongly when Richie April sells cocaine on garbage routes. Tony is not suddenly offended by crime. He is offended by risk. Richie is turning a quiet, useful, semi-legitimate business into something that can attract police attention. Garbage is supposed to look dull. It gives Tony money and cover because nobody wants to look too closely at it. Richie threatens that by bringing drug heat into the one business, Tony needs to keep looking normal. Construction is where the family's money becomes much larger. The Esplanade is the main example. It is a major development project, and everyone understands how much money can come from being attached to it. Tony wants his end. New York wants its end. Ralph becomes powerful because he is connected to that income. Later, Vito's value also comes from construction. The show treats construction as one of the richest rackets because it does not pay once. It can keep paying for as long as the project continues. The scam works through access. A contractor wants the job to move. The mob has influence over unions, job placements, deliveries, and worksite peace. If the contractor cooperates, the project runs with fewer problems. If he resists, delays and labor issues can become expensive. So the contractor pays, hires who he is told to hire, or accepts payroll arrangements that make no business sense but keep the job moving. The no-show and no-work jobs explain this clearly. A no-show job means a mob-connected person gets paid while not showing up. A no-work job means he appears at the site but does little or nothing. Either way, the payroll creates legal-looking income. The contractor pays the salary because it is easier than fighting the family. The mobster gets a paycheck, benefits, and a paper trail. Tony's family gets money and legitimacy at the same time. Christopher's construction position shows how these jobs also work as rewards. He is not placed there because he understands construction. He is placed there because Tony can use construction access to give him income and status. That is the point of the scam. A real project becomes a place where fake or useless labor can hide. Ralph's role shows why construction earners have power. Tony cannot simply treat Ralph like any other problem because Ralph is connected to money that matters. Removing him too quickly could disturb the flow from the Esplanade. This is one of the show's sharpest points about mob business. Violence is easy. Replacing a valuable earner is harder. The tension with New York comes from the same source. The Lupertazzi family wants its share because the Esplanade is too profitable to ignore. A small percentage can mean a large amount when the project is big enough. That is why arguments over shares become personal. These men are not only defending pride, they are defending future income. Gambling is another major source of family money. The show gives us sports betting, football action, card games, and the executive game. The basic business is simple. The family takes bets, controls games, and profits from players who lose. But the real money often begins after the loss, because gambling creates debt. The executive game shows this perfectly. Wealthy men sit at the table because the game feels exclusive. They want to be around Tony's world without admitting what that means. Davy's Catino wants in because he wants status, excitement, and the feeling that he belongs in that room. Tony warns him, but once Davy keeps playing and loses badly, the warning no longer matters. Davy becomes a debtor. Loan sharking is the next step. The family lends money at brutal interest. The borrower may think he is buying time, but the interest becomes the trap. If he cannot pay back the full amount, he has to keep paying the vig. That means the debt can keep producing money even when the borrower is not reducing the principal. From the mob's perspective, a debtor who keeps paying interest can be more useful than a debtor who pays everything back quickly. Davy's debt turns into the sporting goods store bust out. This is one of the clearest scams in the show because we see the logic of it. Davy owns a legitimate store with supplier credit. Tony and the crew use that credit to order goods through the business. They take merchandise, move it out, sell it elsewhere, and leave the store carrying the debt. The store's good name becomes the thing they exploit. A bust-out works because the mob does not need the business to survive. It only needs the business to have credit, inventory, or accounts that can be drained. Davy's store still looks like his store, but the useful parts of it now belong to Tony's crew. They pull out coolers, airline tickets, and other goods. When the bills come due, Davy is left with the collapse. The family has already extracted what it needed. Artie Bucko's loan from Tony shows the personal danger of the same system. Artie borrows money for the Armagnac deal. When the deal fails, he is not simply embarrassed, he owes Tony. The friendship changes because the debt changes the power. Tony may care about Artie, but the money still puts Artie inside Tony's rules. That is how loan sharking spreads. It can enter through a card game, a business dream, or a personal favor. JT Dolan's debt to Christopher shows the lower-level version. JT owes money, and Christopher uses that debt to pressure him. The debt becomes control. Christopher can humiliate him, demand things from him, and treat him like a resource. JT does not have a store like Davy, but he has labor, contacts, and desperation. That is enough. Truck hijacking is more direct. Christopher and Brendan hijack trucks connected to Conley Trucking, and the problem is not only that they stole. The problem is that the trucks are connected to Junior's interests. That shows how organized the crime world is. A truck may already belong to someone's racket. Hitting it without permission can disrupt another man's income. The way hijacking makes money is straightforward. The crew steals a truck carrying goods, then uses contacts to move those goods. The stolen items have to be sold below normal value because the buyers know they are dirty or at least questionable. That is where fencing comes in. The thief needs someone who can turn stolen merchandise into cash. Without that network, the goods are hard to use. With the network, a truckload becomes envelopes. The show gives many examples of stolen goods moving through the family's world. Suits, cigarettes, appliances, wine, coolers, airline tickets, and other merchandise all become money or favors. The Pokemon card hijacking sounds ridiculous, but it makes sense inside the family's economy. If something has resale value, it can be stolen. The crew does not need to care about the product, it only needs someone who will buy it. The stolen wine from the Vipers incident shows a looser version of the same instinct. Tony and Christopher are not running a planned operation. They see an opportunity and take it. The calling card scam is less physical, but it follows the same criminal logic. The family exploits the delay between a service being used and the bill being settled. Calling cards are sold or distributed, phone time is used, and the loss lands somewhere else. The details are not treated like a full technical tutorial in the show, but the basic idea is clear. They find a billing system that can be abused, pull money out of it, and leave another party holding the damage. Wabistics is the show's stock scam. It works like a pump-and-dump boiler room. The stock being pushed is weak or worthless, but brokers pressure people to buy it. Increased buying can make the stock look more active than it deserves to be. The people inside the scam profit while outside investors get stuck with the bad stock. In the show, the mob does not need to understand finance deeply. It uses intimidation to force the brokers to produce sales. That is why the Wabistics office feels both different and familiar. It has phones, desks, and financial language. But the method is still mob pressure. Christopher, Matt Bevilacqua, Sean Gismonti, and the others are not creating value. They are forcing people to sell a bad product. The scam is a street shakedown moved into an office. Benny Fazio's credit card scam at Vesuvio worked through trust. Customers hand over their cards to pay for dinner. Their information is copied and passed into a fraud operation. The customers do not know anything has happened until fraudulent charges appear later. The restaurant becomes useful because people trust it. That is why Artie is so furious. Benny does not just steal from strangers. He uses Artie's business as the place where the theft happens. This scam is smaller than construction, but it is important because it shows how easily Tony's world contaminates ordinary spaces. Vesuvio is supposed to be Artie's honest restaurant. Benny sees a stream of customers and turns it into stolen card information. Artie does not have to approve the scam for the restaurant to be damaged by it. He only has to be close enough to the family for someone like Benny to see an opening. The HUD scam is more polished. Tony, Zellman, and Maurice Tiffin use housing and government-backed money as the vehicle. The scam depends on respectable language. It sounds like urban development, housing assistance, and investment. In reality, the people involved are using the system to pull out profit, while the supposed beneficiaries remain an afterthought. The basic idea is that public programs and property deals can be manipulated when insiders know how to move paperwork, loans, and approvals. Properties can be bought, financed, or transferred in ways that create profit for the people inside the deal. Tony does not have to stand over anyone with a gun because the paperwork does the work. Zellman matters because he gives the scheme political access. Maurice matters because he gives it a respectable front. Tony matters because he brings criminal capital and appetite. This is one of the smartest scams in the show because it shows Tony moving beyond street money. He understands that paperwork can hide theft better than violence can. A beaten debtor looks like crime. A housing deal looks like business. The result can be just as predatory, but it is harder for outsiders to read. The Bada Bing earns as a strip club, but it also works as a family base. Cash comes through the business. The crew meets there. Tony conducts conversations there. Silvio uses it as both business and headquarters. A cash-heavy nightlife business gives criminals room to move money and hold meetings without looking out of place. The darker economics of the Bing are shown through Trace. She owes money to Silvio, and that debt gives him power over her. Her work, body, and time are treated as things the club can control. The show makes it clear that the club's money is not harmless atmosphere. It comes from people who have less power than the men collecting from them. Satriale's pork store is not presented as a huge earner, but its history matters. Old man Satriale's debt to Johnny Boy Soprano is part of the store's origin. That connects Satriale's to the same loan-sharking logic as Davy's store, just from an earlier generation. A civilian business falls under mob pressure, and eventually the family absorbs it. By Tony's time, it is a hangout and meeting place, but its roots are still financial violence. Drugs exist around the family, though Tony does not want the family treated like a drug crew. Richie selling cocaine on garbage routes is the clearest example. Tony's problem is practical. The drug sales threaten Barone and bring attention to a business that is supposed to stay clean. Matouche dealing around the Crazy Horse shows another version of the problem. Drugs bring cash, but they also bring police, informants, addiction, and chaos. Christopher's addiction adds another layer. He is not simply near drug money, he is personally weakened by drugs. That matters because earners are only useful if they can function. Tony's attitude toward drugs is not moral. He tolerates dirty money when it stays controlled. He reacts when drugs threaten better income, public cover, or the stability of someone he needs. The Crazy Horse becomes useful because nightlife naturally brings cash, drugs, and contacts into one place. Adriana runs it, Christopher is attached to it, and people like Matouche move around it. The club itself is not shown as one of Tony's major pillars, but it creates the kind of environment where criminal business can grow. That is why the FBI's attention around Adriana becomes so dangerous. The club is not only a place, it is a doorway into the family's orbit. Stolen cars become important during Tony's Italy trip. His negotiation with Annalisa Zucca involves moving stolen luxury cars through Naples. The scam depends on geography. A stolen car is much harder to recover if it can be moved far away and passed through international criminal contacts. Tony wants that channel because high-end cars carry serious value. Annalisa knows the channel is valuable, so she negotiates from strength. That storyline also shows Tony's limits. In New Jersey, he can dominate most people around him. In Naples, he has to deal with another criminal structure. He cannot just demand terms. The stolen car business is about money, but it is also about access. Tony wants a route that his local family cannot create on its own. Money laundering sits behind all these rackets. Dirty cash is useful, but it is also dangerous. Tony needs ways to store it, move it, and explain it. His connection to Slava shows money being moved outside ordinary channels. Barone gives him legal income. Construction jobs give paper income to other mobsters. Businesses like the Bing and Satriales give the family places where cash, meetings, and favors can look normal. The laundering does not have to be perfect to be useful. The point is to create enough legitimate-looking activity that not every dollar looks like it came from crime. A salary, a payroll job, a business, a property deal, or a cash-heavy club can all help create that fog. Tony still hides money because he knows the official explanations only go so far. The family also makes money without formally owning everything it touches. Tony does not own Vesuvio, but his world still affects it. He does not own every construction company, but he profits from construction. He does not personally run every office scam, but he receives money from men who do. Formal ownership matters less than leverage. If the family can pressure the person who owns the business, the family can still profit from the business. That is why the show's money feels believable. Davy's store explains bust-outs. Barone explains sanitation. The Esplanade explains construction. The executive game explains gambling. Artie and JT explain loans. Wabistics explains stock fraud. Benny explains credit cards. Zellman explains political access. Annalisa explains stolen cars. Each example shows a different way money is pulled out of ordinary life. The final point is that the Soprano family's income is not clean even when it looks legitimate. Davy loses his store. Artie is humiliated. Tracy is trapped inside the Bing's power. Vesuvio's customers are robbed through trust. Poor neighborhoods become material for the HUD scam. Contractors pay because trouble costs more than cooperation. The money always comes from someone else being weaker, exposed, addicted, compromised, or afraid. Tony's lifestyle depends on all of it working at once. Sanitation gives him cover. Construction gives him major income. Gambling creates debt. Loan sharking keeps debt alive. Bust-outs turn failed debtors into short-term assets. Hijackings and stolen goods create fast money. Fraud schemes exploit systems. Clubs and restaurants create cash opportunities. Politics opens doors. Stolen cars connect him to wider markets. That is how the Soprano family makes its money. It studies the situation, finds the pressure point, and takes a cut. Sometimes the pressure point is a gambling debt. Sometimes it is a payroll. Sometimes it is a garbage route, a credit card machine, a public housing program, or a truck full of merchandise. The scam changes, but the family's instinct stays the same. Find the place where money is already moving, get close enough to influence it, and make sure part of it ends up in Tony's hands.